Hey there, Film Buds. Welcome back to the Film Buds podcast. I'm your host, Paul.
And I'm Lauren.
And this is episode 256 of the Film Buds podcast.
Fantastic. We'll confirm that later.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that it's 256. And it's our first one of the month of February.
Woo!
Last month, we did a whole Film Buds homage to the early films of Steven Spielberg, given, Fabelman's coming out and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. What did you think of the month overall, dear?
I thought it was very informative. Honestly, I hadn't really seen a lot of Steven Spielberg before a certain point, that point being Jaws. So it was fun to go back and see some of his younger works and see where, this young man and his love of film produced the old man that we know today, and where that legacy was born. So I thought that was really interesting. Honestly, I feel like I have a more full picture of who Steven is as a filmmaker.
No, I think that's totally fair. I definitely enjoyed it. It was interesting to go back and having a decent working knowledge of, his filmography, go back and see, just how truly deep some of those artistic flourishes go, because we've talked about how much I enjoy, first films of filmmakers, and seeing what sticks and what doesn't. You go back at Bottle Rocket, Wes Anderson's first film, and it has definitely some of those artistic flourishes, but Grand Budapest, on a visual level compared to Bottle Rocket are definitely living in different realms, to a degree. And I think even, Rushmore, his second film. So it was interesting to go back and really go down that journey of, an American icon who's still making films today from that generation. I mean, you look at that generation of filmmakers and, some of them are still working, but few of them are still prolific, still churning out films as routinely.
Yeah.
Him and Scorsese are some of the, still workhorse, sort of filmmakers of that generation, and they can just casually, just sort of put out a classic,
Well, they've got the name,
Yeah.
that's really the driving force for any of these sales. This legacy that they have is a household,
Yeah, but the fact that they, still have it.
I think
that
that's,
they can just sort of,
I think that's fair. I mean, they are getting old, so how many more lucid years do these people truly have?
I guess we'll find out.
No, I mean, honestly.
You know what? If I guess, a slight slip on lucidity ends up creating, Steven Spielberg doing a horror movie again, that sounds fine to me. Because he hasn't done, a true horror movie in a while.
Or a true comedy.
No, that's true. 1941 was a long time ago.
That's right, and he never did it again.
So, of course, we're now in February, and we decided that we were going to do Black History Month on the Film Buds again.
Woo! Always Black History Month in February. Always, all the time.
That's right. So, with that said, we also thought that we would combine it with, some recent films that we didn't officially review on the show. Also films that are, in awards contention still in some places, but also, were in this particular instance, excluded from the Oscars. And so for our first episode of Black History Month, we're going to go with 2022's The Woman King.
Fantastic.
Starring now, if I'm not mistaken, I just got the breaking news alert a second ago, EGOT winner Viola Davis.
Oh, truly?
Yeah, I believe that she is now technically an EGOT.
Wow, to be so legendary. Right here in Black History Month.
Yep, for her audiobook.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yep. And so just in time for Viola
Hey!
Zegot, we're here reviewing The Woman King.
Yes, it's like we planned it.
And of course, we're also going to go down and do some other interesting stuff for Black History Month. We might have a bonus episode that's another little Stephen episode thrown in there. That one might be, 99 cents and you get the full experience kind of thing. TBD.
Oh, fancy.
But it might have both Nick Delgadillo and Madeline Davis on as well, friends of the show. So it'll be a good time.
Yeah, buckle up for that adventure.
Yeah. I can't wait to hear Nick and Mad talk about Temple of Doom.
No, honestly. It's going to be an enjoyable time.
Yeah. But with all of that said, about what we've been doing, what we're doing, I guess, do we want to go ahead and jump on into our official review of The Woman King?
Sure, let's do this thing.
Sure. So The Woman King is, of course, based loosely on a true story of a group of African... an African civilization tribe that sort of actively fought back to an extent against colonialism. They didn't find themselves overtaken by European settlers when they arrived. They were able to, sort of endure and remain a sovereignty, whereas, a lot of other groups were completely overrun and sold into the slave trade. And so the plot of the film is a historical epic inspired by the true events that took place in the kingdom of Dahomey, one of the most powerful states of Africa in the 18th and 19th centuries.
Alrighty, tighty.
The film is directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. It is written by Dana Stevens, with a story by Maria Bello. I'd be really curious about that story credit by Maria Bello. That's interesting. And the film stars Viola Davis, Thuzo Mbedu, Lashana Lynch, Sheila Adam, and John Boyega. And I guess with all that said, I'll turn it over to you, dear. What did you think of The Woman King?
So honestly, at the end of the day, I think that this movie is like a passable film. I guess I should elaborate on that. So we watched this movie with my parents a while back while we were there for the holidays in December. And it was definitely parent approved kind of film, both of my parents stayed alert and active throughout the entire film, which is always, an A+ kind of deal. So if that's what you're looking for, you got it right here. What did I think about this film? I thought that this film was interesting, but I feel like it lost a lot of focus on what the film was supposed to be about. Because it's called The Woman King, but then we spend a lot of our main character focus on a completely different character. And her rise into this community of female warriors, and her kind of hazing into this society, and her training montage. And we waste a lot of time with that focus. And I guess going into this, I thought that this movie was going to be about Viola.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally it's about her. She's the main person on the poster. She's the Woman King. You know that going into the film. You're just leading into how, I guess, she becomes the Woman King. And I think that it gets really distracted with this young girl and her journey through this and this redemption story that she goes on. Whereas I felt like our I guess what I assumed was going to be our main focus got really sidelined to just being she's a badass general.
Yeah.
Who does badass things, and gosh darn it, is she a mean person? But she's tough love, and I felt like this movie got real hard into that. We and really where, and then they kind of just like slid in the stuff about the slave trade really casually. I felt like that was the only thing really moving the plot forward in any direction. John Boyega's fantastic.
Yeah.
John Boyega's costume designer is fantastic. It was so much fun to see John Boyega in this film because it's completely different than Finn in the best kind of way. He literally gets to wear these just fantastic silk robes that are so vibrant and so patterned and so colorful and so luxurious. You know, he really feels like royalty, and it's so good. It gives me, real hard Black Panther vibes where I'm like, yeah,
Gersha
Wakanda.
Phillips is the costume designer.
Fantastic. Gersha, you did amazing, sweetie. Because also like his what are they called? The concubines?
Mm-hmm.
His concubines also all look fantastic. They really elevate, I think, this idea of African beauty in this film, because it's I think that they're really leaning on that, honestly, is this kind of, it's the real life Wakanda.
Yeah.
Feeling. And I don't know how much of this is truly accurate. And it shows, I think, a lot. It's like 300, the Gladiator movie of Spartan, excuse me, whatever. Gladiator is fine, I guess. It's like that though. It's historically accurate-ish.
I understand that.
It's about events that happened, but then we threw in some sex appeal.
No, I definitely understand that.
And I guess, I don't know, I guess I was expecting something more from this film.
I understand where you're coming from with that. First of all, I think that you're right. So much of this movie on a pure aesthetics level is tremendous. The cast is hot.
Yeah.
Everyone is filmed immaculately. The cinematographer is Polly Morgan, and I think that she did a great job. And then, I think that the director, Gina Prince Bythewood, definitely knew how to make everything look luxurious and rich and fantastic. There was plenty of, production design in certain parts of this movie, like the costuming and the makeup effects. I think that what you are getting at is that, there were a lot of spinning plates, and it does feel as though some of them were just sort of left to drop or just very quickly removed, and discarded, and it's no longer in rotation. Because there is this interesting thing of John Boyega is this king who is facing colonizers coming in, enslaving people. What is he to do? This uncertainty about going into conflict, into open war with these people. And he has all of these wives and advisors, etc., that make up his council, and the one that he takes the most seriously is also the one that is the most brutish, in the courts. This general played by Viola Davis, and she is, to everyone else there, offensive, in how she's brusque and doesn't come in perfumed, and that sort of thing. And she doesn't have all of the respect all of the time. But it's because, she won him that throne, So we've got all of this really interesting interplay literally just right there. And then we do start to also get into this little romance plot between our actual main character, or our co-lead, I suppose you could say, and this half African,
half Spaniard
guy that she meets, who came here with the colonizers because he wanted to return to his homeland where his mother was from. And then you also have this entire plot of the mysterious parentage of our main character. And then you have her rising up through the ranks of this military in the midst of this conflict. Mm-hmm. And, eventually at the end of it, Viola Davis is anointed the Woman King. And it just feels like a lot of dynamics happening at once that don't necessarily always have the most satisfactory of payoffs. Mm-hmm. And I also don't think that, it reaches as far with certain things, partially because the fact that it's PG-13, but it only has the 13 because it's fighting. If we strip away some of this, ultimately it is kind of like a PG, pretty straightforward historical film. It's not really taking bites or risks, or doing anything sort of out there. The person who is, of course, doing some of the most out there stuff is the person that you highlighted almost immediately, John Boyega, who is almost doing a Ben Affleck in The Last Duel.
Oh yeah, he's just here to have a good time.
I look hot, and my lines are good enough that I can sink my full teeth into them in whatever performance I want as a king. Mm-hmm. And it's good.
No, yeah, you can tell that he is so excited to not be playing Finn right now.
Yeah.
And it's so good to see. Honestly, it really reaffirmed, whether or not John Boyega could act.
He's apparently great in a TV anthology film called Small Axe.
Okay.
That is a 70s set British cop story.
Oh, interesting. I'd be down to take a gander.
If I'm not mistaken, it's directed by Barry Jenkins.
Okay.
Who did 12 Years a Slave and some other films as well. Or no, excuse me, that's not Barry Jenkins. That's and I am switching up my directors. He's got the same name as Steve McQueen.
Lightning Steve McQueen, you
there
say?
We go.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, it's Steve McQueen.
Okay.
Who did Small Axe, because Steve McQueen is British. And so, yeah. I'd be interested in giving that one a watch as well. And so I think that Boyega is having a great time here, and I think that, Viola is making the most of the material. I don't think that any of the cast is doing a bad job. I think the material isn't getting all the way there on the page. And I don't think that it's taking those bites, those risks, doing those slightly interesting things. This is what we would refer to, as a pretty, standard sword and sandal movie.
Yeah. I found myself getting bored. As the longer the movie went on, the more bored I became, because I was like, oh, we're just following the same tropes that I'm used to. I was really hoping to be, to just go on this adventure of this story from history. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, oh, no, there's this mid-act love story that's, unnecessary as hell.
And it is because of the generosity with the history.
Yeah.
That it does become, to your point, boring.
Yeah, and I think that it follows a really traditional landscape of what this film needs to be. We've got our action sequences that are totally badass, but they are mixed in with a lot of personal drama, and we had to have some Game of Thrones shit thrown in there, to really spice it up. And I don't know. I felt like this movie was very passably good, but
I think that honestly taking that step, and maybe I'm wrong, taking that step, I think, into being an R-rated movie and dropping the love interest would have really upgraded a lot of this movie, because we could have gotten into adult topics. And that's the thing. We're talking about colonization and the active enslavement of African colonies, and then we're going to try and PG-13 this hoe.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any sense to me. And how dare her love interest be the most sexy man that has ever dripped on this planet Earth? It was just, it threw me out completely. I was like, why on earth is he ripped?
He's so impossibly sexy.
Why is he ripped and then in these painted on pants? What on earth?
He looks like he literally looks like a romance novel cover. Yes. At one point.
Yes, and I was like, this is so unrealistic to the point where it's just plain offensive.
And I think that I saw a lot of people compare this movie to like Braveheart and Gladiator. And I think that like one of the big things with like, both Braveheart and Gladiator is they are both taking that R-rated bite where they're able to take the mature adult themes, to mature adult places. Mm-hmm. And the with Braveheart, the end of that movie, we stick true to history. Braveheart doesn't make it in the end, guys.
Dun, dun, dun!
And history, spoiler alert, I guess, he's drawn and quartered. So...
that's what you want to hear.
Yeah, I think that the other thing is, they're willing to take those hard tonal beats, and like we do lose a Zogi, spoiler alert, in the process of the movie, but it does just feel that it has this tameness, and I think that it is because we need to do things like lose the love interest, focus on the politics of it all. Let's look at like a great example of something that balanced human interest. We'll use a modern example, The Last Duel, Ridley Scott's The Last Duel. Mm-hmm. We're balancing the interplay of these relationships inside of a larger political context of instability inside of this conflict. Mm-hmm. And that movie does a great balancing act of all of those perspectives and opinions of three different characters all inside of this intrigue. But they also make the decision to make it about the personal side, not the historical side. And here they try to make it both.
Yeah, it's trying to Titanic for me, where
and we don't
like,
also have the same runtime as a Titanic.
Yeah, no. And I guess for me, I think that obviously the stuff that's happening in Titanic, James Cameron's Titanic, is not real. Other than the pure logistics of that boat sank and people died.
And some of the people...
Yeah, and some of the names and
were
whatnot.
accurate.
Yeah, but our main story
Jack and Rose, not real.
Not a bit. But it doesn't make the movie feel less genuine and less interesting as a viewer. Whereas here... it's so distracting.
It's the issue of here's the thing. The historical liberties taken with this, give it this kind of false sensibility because these people weren't here doing these things, etc. And we know that about Jack and Rose, but they don't try to save the ship. They don't try and...
No, they're just victims to it.
Yes, and I think that that's one of the reasons that sort of works better for Titanic is because we don't suddenly have Jack spotting the iceberg before anyone else does. And trying desperately to warn the captain.
But nobody wants to believe him.
Because he's a poor man, Like, we don't do any of that kind of cheap schlockery.
No, yeah, and I was so mad when they brought in the hot dude. I was like, I was so angry. And mind you, we're watching this movie with my parents, so I can't truly voice my opinions about this person. But like, it's just so unnecessary. It's absolutely ridiculous. Homie looked like he was hitting the gym on a daily basis, and that's just not historically accurate. I'm sorry.
Well, and you mentioned Titanic. Here we are. We do have a big historical epic, right? Mm-hmm. It comes in at 2:15. Mm-hmm. If I'm being honest, we need to be hitting 2.5 hours. Because I do want to really understand some of the intricacies, and there were certain things that were rushed in this movie.
Yeah,
that we just glanced through.
Yeah, because we had to get back to the stuff that was the interesting part, the drama.
Yeah.
I could have cared less. The parts that I was truly having fun with was all of the council stuff.
And the politics of all of that.
Yeah, it was so interesting because I also really enjoyed this kind of like tribal nations feeling of like he was the king, but he had his many advisors that were specializing in different things.
And I even dug the idea that like she was making some bad calls out of personal vendetta.
Yeah, because that's also very human. And then how are we going to get past that? But I think that's why we needed her to just be our main character instead of this weird, like, surprise plot twist of this, like, young girl. Like, I understand that they were trying to, like, mirror their experiences to, like, our final conclusion of, like...
She gets accepted into the ranks as, like, the new young version of Viola, and Viola becomes the woman king.
Exactly.
You know, at the same time.
You know? But no, that's not what we get either. So it's just... It's just a whole lot of, like... And then they lived happily ever after. That is so not deserved.
Yeah. It is, and, you know, it is, like... To your point, I think that is also why it's a little bit maybe disingenuous to compare it to Braveheart or Gladiator or something like that, because, you know, you go to those movies, because people did make those comparisons a lot, but you go to those movies, they're about who? Braveheart. They're about who? The Gladiator. I'm not going to Gladiator, and surprise, it's about his nephew. You know.
Oh my gosh, you go to see Harry Potter and it's really about Ron Weasley, guys.
Yeah, you know, it's
been about Ron the whole time.
You know, I think that for me, and maybe this was always the intent of the script, but they had to sell it on Viola, you know, but then that's a flaw of marketing and expectation building.
No, yeah. Honestly, and I don't understand why they did that. You know, maybe, gosh. Another movie that does this to me that it pissed me off just as much there was the new Doctor Strange movie, where it's really about America, the entire film, with a side bit of it being about Doctor Strange. But they had to sell it as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. He's not doing anything. He's an ornament.
Yeah, he's not going on a journey.
No, and his journey is so the same journey that we've gone on 1,000 times with him. He's going on the same journey of, why doesn't my ex-girlfriend want me back?
Yeah, it's a paper cutout journey.
Yeah, it's boring, and I don't know. I feel like this reminds me a lot of that.
Well, and you know what? Let's compare it to another kind of even mid-tier version of this movie type that we watched recently.
Okay.
The Kevin Costner Robin Hood.
Oh, great time.
Yes, still ultimately, even though it's campy, a better experience, I would say, to a certain degree, if only because they're making some weird choices, we've got some good big performances, and for the most part, we're keeping it really focused.
Yeah.
Him and Maid Marian, we follow the bullet points of that fine, but we're really honed in on him and the sheriff and the entire rivalry of these two played out at afar until they finally come head to head.
No, yeah, I feel like they honestly were like, crap, how do we make a movie without putting a love story in it? Because it doesn't make sense for Viola to fall in love with anybody. I know, we'll just have an entirely sub-B plot that's actually our main A plot, and then people they'll just enjoy the ride.
Yeah. It's... And you can have all of these things at the same time in a movie, but you need to figure out how to prioritize and arrange them in a way that they work, and you also need to give your movie the time that it needs. And I just think that this movie maybe needed more runtime if it wanted to have all these things.
Or just less stuff to focus on.
Exactly. Because $2.15 is a big bill for every plot element that I just put in there.
No,
Think
yeah.
about how the Pirates movies... another epic, you know, that has romance and swashbuckling and politics happening behind the scenes. Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl is 2:23. So we've got almost 10 whole minutes of extra time that the right 10 minutes can really improve a movie.
Yeah. I don't disagree. And I think that, like, I've been really marinating on this movie for a while now about how I feel about it.
Me too, because I want to like it more than I do.
Exactly.
I'm desperate to like it more than I do.
When we saw the commercials for this movie at
Kick ass.
nauseum, every time we went to go see a movie, even if it wasn't an action film, they were like, "You're watching a horror movie? Well, guess what? Here's the Woman King." And I was like, we're going to watch this movie and it's going to be a good time. It's going to make me feel exactly like that Black Panther movie made me feel. You know, it's going to make me be so proud to be a black person. And this movie went, hey, look, black people in Africa. And then just kind of like got distracted. And I think that we should be allowed to critique that.
No, for sure. And I think that, honestly, I was a little bit surprised when I saw that. The reason that I was a little bit surprised when I said that I'd be curious about that story by Maria Bello credit. I know that this was directed by a woman of color, but both of our writers, Dana Stevens, our main actual screenplay writer.
Oh, God, guys.
And then Maria Bello is, like, literally the actor Maria Bello here with a story by credit. And so I'm really curious if that's accurate or not.
I really don't know. And that maybe explains a lot of my critiques about this film. Maybe we summed it up really nicely in a nice bow. We had white writers, and that's just that on a hat, They said that they were going to come in here and write a story about black people, and they did half of that.
They wrote a story.
Yep. And they were black people.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think that also the real story of this tribe is this delicate balance of navigating a really complicated issue.
Yeah, but I really think that they didn't want to talk about the issue.
Yada, yada, yada.
They were like, slavery is such a B plot, C, maybe even D plot of this film right now. It is not really about the African slave trade, because also then we would not have had a sex scene in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Because you are not about to tell me that people being auctioned off right outside the window has any amount of sex appeal. This was an unserious film.
Woo! Yeah. Fair. Because again, to make the comparison, Braveheart does, part of the whole thing is like the Scottish hate the whole prima nocta thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't get too graphic with it, but we've got an entire sequence, of pillage and plunder and rape,
Yeah.
And yeah, it's toothless stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's made for TV, Disney Channel, to your point, parent approved, and that's why I think, for me, it's not dissimilar from, like, Hidden Figures.
Oh, but I think that Hidden Figures is doing a better job.
But Hidden Figures doesn't have to go as hard hitting. And
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
why it can carry the balance better.
Exactly. It's still parent approved. It's still a family film, but it's still, I think it's taking it more seriously.
This pulled punches.
Yeah.
And that's the issue at the heart of this. It was pulling its punches.
And it could have been a really interesting film about something that's very serious and is still topical for today. And they were like, no!
I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. I think Steven Spielberg's West Side Story has more teeth.
Yeah, because at least it's still about the racism of it.
Yeah.
And about these two people who, at the odds of all of this, it still found love, and had hope for their future. Or this doesn't mean anything. This doesn't mean anything. I'm so mad. That
it's a little too glossy.
I hate his entire plot, honestly. Him coming here from Spain because his mom was here with his slave trader friend, and him over here trying to convince everybody that he's not a racist son of a bitch. And then he ends up getting the girl. And they try to convince me that it's some star-crossed lovers crap. And I have to call out.
My favorite part of it was honestly her being like, I saved you, but I'm gonna dip now.
Like, my goodness.
It was my favorite part because I was like, no, that's fair.
I think I would have even accepted their love story more if we had, like, consummated their love story, like, out between these two worlds, when they run away to that nighttime escape. And they're, like, in the woods together or whatever. Like, I would have been like, all right, and this is where they have sex. Not after he, quote-unquote, saves her from the slave trade. Don't you dare.
Yikes.
After she just watched her friend die. Don't you dare. I'm sorry.
What?
It's just not great.
Problem?
Uh.
Oof.
We're really starting out Black History Month strong. But I think that is really important to, I feel like there's a thing that happens in the Black community where you go, well, Black people made it, so therefore you cannot critique it. It is something that we have to hold up on a platform because it is a part of our history. No, we can still judge stuff.
Well, and honestly, you know, a lot of people have been like, it's a real shame that this movie got totally shut out. And I will say this, I think that it is a shame that the cinematography was shut out.
Yeah.
I think it is a shame that Viola was shut out. Mm-hmm. I think it is a shame that the costume, hair, and makeup were shut out.
Yeah, because it's stunning. It's a beautiful looking
Production design, all of these things. This is not a Best Picture film.
No.
This is not a Best Director film. Sorry.
No.
This is not a Best Written film.
No. And it's so, and if on a first glance, it's so passable. It's, you know, it's checking all the boxes.
It's like Bohemian Rhapsody. And here's the thing. Bohemian Rhapsody shouldn't have been nominated or won anything either.
But it's about
But this
Queen.
is just as sort of offensively glossy
Yeah.
about complicated history.
No, I think that's fair.
So if you had to rate The Woman King 1 out of, you know, I guess you could do a 0. I don't think you will. But if you had to rate it out of 5, what would you give it?
I think that I'm going to give this movie I'm going to give this movie a 2. I don't really think that this movie is the movie that I wanted based on the context that it was talking about. Are there things that I like about this film? Of course. I think that the action looks great. I think that
we did not address that the action is top notch. The battles are cool, even though they aren't R-rated battles. They're dope.
No, yeah, they are really kicking ass, and I have to give that. And they are
really
making
cool shit.
They are making these women just as powerful and as interesting as how I felt about you know, in the original Wonder Woman film. You know, being like, wow, these are some kick ass women. That's fantastic. You don't see that often. The parts that I have to judge are everything else.
Yeah, because Can I watch this movie like My Dear Father-in-Law, battles only?
Yeah.
Sure. But I've got to judge the whole, you know. I've got to judge the thing as it is.
Yeah, and it's just not what I wanted. Between the battles was not really what I needed, and I felt like as the movie progressed, the plot got even worse for me.
Yeah. The focus got harder and harder.
Yeah.
And when she finally gets, you know, the status of Woman King, it almost feels like, wait, it's like that?
No, yeah! Oh, yeah! It didn't feel deserved. Even after all of it, I was like,
you know, it doesn't
really
feel like the crowning of Aragorn.
Oh, yeah, where he's like really, he deserved that.
He earned this moment.
Because it was because he was a king.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in every sense of the word. He was a person of the people, you know, he was a leader. He understood what he was doing and the value of that. And this film was like, yada, yada, yada. And then she becomes queen?
Yeah.
You know? I don't know. What are you going to give this film?
I'm going to give it a 2.5.
Okay.
Because at least everyone looked sexy.
No, yeah, they looked great. They body-oiled the hell out of the entire cast. They glistened. They were fan. This movie had sex appeal. That's fan.
Yeah, these people have never looked better on screen.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. And like, so much of especially big screen, you know, big budget Viola lately that I have seen of her has been like Amanda Waller, you know, or Michelle Obama.
Yeah, where she's like in a button-up a pantsuit.
And so getting to see her be like, you know, strong with this, you know, big, like almost like faux hawk, you know, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. She looked great, you know. It reminded me that like Viola still has like pure sex appeal.
No,
you know?
yeah, and like the actor who plays Izuki like is phenomenal.
Lashana Lynch, yes.
Yeah, she's absolutely phenomenal.
The new 007.
Yes.
In No Time to Die.
Yes. No, I prefer this movie of this performance over that one.
Yeah. She's also in the Matilda movie.
Okay. Yes, you did tell me this. Okay.
And so I really, really enjoyed certain parts of this movie. I really wish that it had reached so much further and deeper I should have bawled my eyes out at least at one point in this movie, and I never got there. And I think that I'll give it the extra half again because everyone looked phenomenal.
No, yeah, I'm just disappointed because this is not, unlike a Gladiator and Gladiator type films, this is not something that's going to get another film anytime soon about it. Yeah. And so it's also, this is our only one that we have of it. This is the thing that people are going to go and say, we checked that box and we don't have to revisit this.
Yeah.
So disappointment, the fact that you had this and you squandered it.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Disappointing.
But with all that said, we'll move on to our sort of post-show or post-review discussion. The first bit of news is that Netflix, if you haven't heard, took an absolute walloping over their
bad decision making,
proposed password sharing policies. They have now said that some of that was shared in error, and they're going to clarify certain things, and the 31 days is not, an accurate sentiment, and don't you worry,
This was shared in error. That is the most. Don't even. I meant to not click send, and I did. And
whoopsie.
Whoa, that was a mistake. That is the most horseshit I have ever heard. Fantastic. I'm glad that they've got a better media person than the Trump estate does. They said, whoa here. But it was a bad call. That entire thing was going to blow up in their face. And honestly, I'm shocked at how quickly it blew up in their face. I was expecting it to be at least, a few months into the whole program. They announced that thing like last week.
Yeah.
And it's done.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I think that they thought that if they put this in place, that all of those people who were mooching off of somebody else's Netflix account was then going to go, gosh,
I'll get one.
I have to buy one because I can't live without my Netflix shows. And they got the exact opposite.
I think that it's really interesting. Immediately all across social media, everyone was talking about torrenting. And someone also I saw pulled up an old article where one of the Netflix people was like, pirating is not a pricing, issue or anything like that. It's a convenience issue, it's if you're not making something and giving it to people in a way that's easy and accessible,
then they'll turn to pirating.
To pirating and that sort of thing.
That's fantastic.
And so people found like all of these instances where, as a brand, they openly contradicted everything that this new policy stood for. And so they've already backtracked.
Fantastic. Gosh.
However, honestly, TBD, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw this reflected in quarterly earnings.
I mean, I'm sure that because
some people might not come back still.
Because honestly, we're on your parents' Netflix, and mind you, we're still living in the same house, so that 30-day rule or whatever wasn't going to apply to us. But if this had stayed, I would have strongly been like, you know what? I don't think that we need Netflix anymore.
Yeah.
So, what does that say for your platform? That there's not anything really of interest that will keep me coming back. Or, I'll come back like people do already for the one thing that I want to watch with my 7-day free trial, and then I'm going to watch that thing, and then I'm going to dip again before you ever get a cent out of my pocket.
Yeah. And I think that they ultimately they have lost sight of what their business model is.
Yeah. They saw dollar signs in their eyes and forgot everything else.
And I think that it's reflected in this kind of bad policy making. In the other news, I did want to, of course, elaborate. Like I said, Viola Davis is now an EGOT winner.
Yes, congratulations, Viola.
So to clarify, like I said, she won her Grammy for the audiobook Finding Me. She won her Academy Award in 2017 for Fences. She won her Emmy in 2015 for How to Get Away with Murder. And she won 2 Tony Awards, actually. One for King Hedley II and the other for Fences.
Fantastic.
She is the 3rd black woman to receive an EGOT.
Is Whoopi one of them?
Whoopi Goldberg is, in fact, one of the other winners.
Oh, fantastic. I'm glad that I guessed that.
There are 6 black EGOT winners in total. There is Whoopi. There is John Legend. Jennifer Hudson. James Earl Jones.
Fantastic.
Harry Belafonte.
Oh, my God.
Quincy Jones. Common. Cynthia Erivo. And Billy Porter.
Amazing. I was not expecting Cynthia Erivo to be our other black woman. It's really interesting that there is such a, I guess it is split down the middle. You said that there were 6 of them?
Yes. Oh, excuse me. There are 6 in total and some who are on the cusp. Billy Porter, Cynthia Erivo, and Common are on the cusp.
Okay, so then we've got...
We've got Whoopi.
And Jennifer Hudson are 2 other females.
James Earl Jones, Harry Belafonte, Quincy Jones.
Copy. It's interesting that all of our females have happened in the last 50 years where, other than maybe James getting his, there were some of the, and I was like, those are black and white photos, guys.
Yeah.
But,
back in the day, especially, a lot of people worked across every sort of field.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not unlike Fred Astaire, stage and screen.
I mean, we could totally go back to that, but then we have to also value theater more.
Yeah, and we're going to have to also raise the caliber on, you can't just act, you have to also have one extra thing. Because a lot of those people were typically singers and dancers, or actors and dancers, or actors and singers, or triple threats in some capacity, even if they couldn't really do them all that great.
Well, honestly, I think that at the end of the day, I think that my acting caliber for film actors needs to improve, because I feel like performing the same show 8 days a week, or 8 times a week, is more of a test of who you are as an actor, if you can go there on a consistent basis, versus people who can just do it those few times, those few takes, and that be it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't even get the whole script at once. Yeah. Imagine, I think that would truly
How could you ever really learn material that way?
Exactly, honestly.
What's the emotional journey of my character in the larger piece? Not just my scenes, but how does my entire character's journey fit into the entire piece?
Yeah.
What notes do I think that I need to pull on in my journey that enrich
the themes of the film?
Piece?
Yeah. No, and I think that would also get a lot of people out of the weeds as well. We wouldn't have all these actors where you're like, oh, they just do this one bit and that's it. We wouldn't have people like The Rock who are late. If you had to do both and you couldn't do one without the other, then people like him would be out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's no way that man is going to actively go to rehearsals and then shows on time.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah.
But he's going to be a diva about the whole thing.
The curtain is going to come and your understudy is right there.
Yeah.
And they're chomping.
Ready. ready. And people pay to see you, and so they get to see the understudy now, which they're going to be upset about, but at the end of the day, they're probably going to get a better performance. Coming at you, The Rock.
And so, I think that, I think that definitely you look at a lot of, typical actors, in a film setting, and very few of them do have, especially in the way that a lot of big budget stuff is done, those chops for even working with a director like David Fincher.
Yeah, no.
You hear about the fact, I think Harvey Keitel is a tremendous actor. I think it is hilarious that he ended up quitting Eyes Wide Shut because
it was too difficult.
Stanley Kubrick tried to fucking Meisner him.
Yeah.
And tried to have him just walk through a door like 60 times or some shit. And I think that definitely Stanley Kubrick is a madman, but also that's kind of stage work.
Yeah.
But in a film time frame.
Yeah.
That's rehearsals and performances across an entire year contract on stage condensed into 1 to 2 days of filming. Mm-hmm. Where he makes you do it every time until you get it.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's fucking hilarious that he quit. But again, I think that it goes back to, like, so many people, couldn't work with someone like Fincher, who does that kind of thing.
Or even, something as wonderful as Wes Anderson films, just something that's...
The precision of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Clockwork.
Yeah, and honestly, if it's a craft, and I think people have gotten distracted by celebrities and have forgotten that this is about art and about artists performing.
What's so interesting to me, about, a great example for me of a clockwork set of filmmakers that are all about the script is law and timing. Mm-hmm. The Coens. Mm-hmm. I think it's so interesting that Joel Coen went on to then go and do a Shakespeare adaptation. Mm. The script is law. Yeah. And it is clockwork. Mm-hmm. Also, interestingly, it's not the one that actually has a PhD in English.
Well, when that's the person that you spend the most time with, mm-hmm. You don't need a PhD at that point.
So yeah, I think that, or a master's, whatever it is, he's got a higher degree.
He's got a fancy pants degree, guys.
That's right. The last thing that I wanted to talk about was Peter Safran and James Gunn revealed the upcoming DC slate.
Oh, okay. So what's DC got planned for us?
So, of course, they're still releasing The Flash.
Yeah, terrible decision.
They are going to, of course, still move ahead with Aquaman, The Last Kingdom.
Amazing, terrible.
The Batman Part 2, still happening.
Exciting.
But they also announced, and Blue Beetle is still happening.
Okay, TBD.
But they announced Superman Legacy.
Okay.
Which is going to be the James Gunn written and directed Superman film.
Oh, interesting.
They're rebooting Superman.
It might actually have a point.
Well, I mean, he is also a kid from the Midwest.
Well, I think that James Gunn, if anybody's going to make Superman interesting, it's going to be a guy who's interesting.
It's coming out July 25.
Okay.
The Authority.
Okay.
Which is about a more obscure sort of character. Very sci-fi edged.
Yeah,
so very in line with James Gunn.
That sounds right.
A new Batman film will also coincide with what we have going on. Mm-hmm. Potentially maybe even able to coincide with, like, Justice League and that sort of thing.
Okay.
Batman Brave and the Bold. And it's going to be Batman and Robin focusing on him and Damian Wayne, the child that he has with Talia al Ghul.
Right.
Who becomes one of his Robins.
Copy. Gosh, this is not a storyline that I know anything about.
We've got Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, mm-hmm. which is a science fiction sort of centric story for Supergirl as well. Mm-hmm. Swamp Thing.
Yeah!
We've got a rumor for a Swamp Thing director.
Okay.
James Mangold, who
Really?
did Logan.
Ooh. Interessante.
And is doing the upcoming Indiana Jones movie. Mm-hmm. And as far as TV goes, we have Creature Commandos, which is going to be a 7-episode animated show with Amanda Waller present. We're also getting Waller.
Okay, good.
Brought to us by the team that did Watchmen, the TV show.
Okay.
And Supernatural. Booster Gold is getting a TV show.
I don't know who Booster Gold is.
Booster Gold is a guy who time travels from the future into the past to make himself a superhero, because essentially he's kind of like pretty mid in
The future. Copy, I like this.
Lanterns.
Oh, exciting. We had a terrible Green Lantern film. Make them better.
And Paradise Lost, a Themyscira set story about the Amazons and the birthplace of Wonder Woman.
Okay.
It's about the genesis of the island. So it's probably also going to involve Zeus. And be like a lot of myth. James Gunn apparently described this slate as being about gods and monsters.
I fuck with it.
And this is just, some of what they have planned.
Well, I'm more excited than I've ever been about DC and films. Thank you so much, and good day.
So, honestly, I think that it'll be interesting. I definitely am curious about what he wants to do with Superman, because I think that is a character that is woefully misunderstood and
that's
that
what I
people
mean.
have lost sight of.
Yeah, he's too noble and nobody knows what to do with that.
Yeah. And I'm also looking forward to some of the other things that he's doing that also feel like real James Gunn flourishes, skipping all the way to Damian Wayne, who he describes as a little murderous bastard.
Okay.
Because he is. He's a Robin that, because he's raised by Talia, Batman has to, crack the whip on him and be like, we don't kill.
Copy.
And so I'm interested in really going down some of these roads and seeing where it takes us.
No, yeah, very much so. I'm looking very much forward to it. I'm gonna skip over the first few things that you said because I'm not interested, and then after that, I'm
other than the Batman Part 2.
Yeah. That was
and Blue Beetle.
Yeah, but no, I'm you know what I meant.
Oh yeah. Flash and Aquaman.
Yeah, Flash and Aquaman.
Yeah, I know.
Could care fucking less.
But no, I'm looking forward to what he does with it, and I think James Gunn is interesting. I may not always 100% agree with some of his opinions and perspectives on certain things in relation to particularly standing by Ezra and the Flash film.
I think that was more just contract at that point.
Yeah, but I think that James Gunn is a really interesting person and a really interesting filmmaker and storyteller, and I think that these characters are characters that are very near and dear to his heart. I still hope that he also does somehow in the middle of all this find time to do things that are not at all DC Comics related. Because I think that that's where he does his best.
For sure.
But that's pretty much all that I have for everybody. Dear, do you have anything for the listeners?
No. Catch us next week with some more Black History. Woo!
And let me tell you this. History is important. The humanities are important. You need to understand where we came from to ever hope to change where we're going. And history is an uncomfortable subject, but a necessary one. And it doesn't have to be about shame, but it does have to be to a certain level about accountability and honesty of where things went.
I like that.
And we'll always, of course, try to bring you history with a little bit of a wink and a nudge and a smile as well. Because it's always good to enrich and to learn and to deepen. Because also, once you really scratch away some of the surface level stuff, as we always say, the human condition is universal.
That's correct.
So thank you guys, as always, for listening. Like Lauren said, be sure to come and join us next week. And we'll see you guys later.
Bye!
Bye.